It's time to write some film score. Welcome to Elliot Educates, the series where I teach you everything I know about a specific skill. Shouldn't take long. Today we're going to be going over film composition. I've been hired by my old buddy Mike Borka to do some music for Rise Against the Fall. This is a dark, dramatic crime thriller, filmed in and set in Minnesota. Mike and I met back in 2010 while filming a couple of feature films for Restraining Hollywood.
You Walker? That's right. Got the money?
Over the years, Mike and I have worked on a variety of different projects together in a variety of different capacities. On this film, we wrote the screenplay together. He played the main character. I had a cameo as a hired goon.
Hired goons?
I did a few rounds on the edit, and here I am doing the film score. In this industry, you have to be able to wear a lot of different hats because you never know which one you're going to be asked to put on at any given moment. So there are basically two ways to score a film. One is with temp tracks, one is without. Temp tracks are where the filmmakers place existing music into their edit just to see how music might affect the ultimate flow and feeling of each scene. You can also sometimes get the film delivered without any music, and as the composer you have to kind of feel your way through it. That way is very exciting and very creative, but it can also be very scary, because I think in any medium, the blank page is the most daunting thing you will face. Our temp track for today is Rectifier from the Tron soundtrack. No, not the 1982 Journey Wendy Carlos version, the 2010 Daft Punk version. This track is pretty intense. Let's take a listen. It's one bar of music, 4 beats repeated over and over and over again, but each time things are added to it and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and builds into this huge crescendo. And so that's the overall vibe we're going for today when we replace this temp track. So this should be an interesting experiment, as I've dealt with this temp track before in 2012 when I was working on my film American Rescue Squad. So today should be interesting. It's the same composer dealing with the same temp track, but for a different movie, and hopefully we'll get something completely different on the other side. The really fun thing about composing is you take a temp track and you filter it through the personality and the experience of the composer, and you come out with something that's totally different. And most of the time you wouldn't even recognize the temp track that started. So it's a really fun process where even if you try and recreate the thing to the best of your abilities, it'll still end up with your own personal touch on it. So this is great. I have one track to steer away from and one track to steer into. So I'll have kind of a push and pull thing going on this whole time. Our first step is to figure out the beats per minute of our temp track rectifier. So we'll get that playing. And of course, if you don't know the beats per minute of the temp track you're dealing with, you just tap it in.
Hey, just tap it in.
Okay, so it's 133. I do have one instrument that I've kind of been playing with already for the film score, and that is a brass drama instrument that animates over a long period. Let me show you. So Philharmonic here, orchestral sections, mixed orchestra, brass drama. Okay, so that's normally what the instrument sounds like. It hits very fast and also releases very fast. So I've been playing around with the settings here. So it was set to 0 seconds. I'm going to set it to like 20 seconds. And same thing with the sustain and the release. Cool, and now I want to add some distortion to it. The movie is about the lead character, Vince, and his descent into madness. So this is the instrument I'm using to kind of trigger that throughout the film. The nice thing about this is it takes 30 seconds to animate from beginning to end. And, you know, just for the record, the longer it takes for your notes to animate, the fewer of them you have to write. Okay, so now that we got our GarageBand project set up, we are going to drag in the movie file. This will add to the overall size of your project, so make sure the movie is compressed and nice and small. The movie I'm dealing with today is still a little bit rough. There are certain visual effects and color correction things that need to be fixed before the movie is finalized. Let's get a string section, which will be kind of the basic heartbeat of this track. So we need some bassy strings with some staccato to them, so they can definitively hit almost like drum beats. Yes, great. So there are a lot of factors that go into determining what key to set your track in. For this movie, I thought it would be interesting to use the title for inspiration. So I'm going to set A minor as the sad theme or the dramatic theme, and F major as the happy theme or the love theme. It might seem a little simplistic and silly, but they used a similar technique in The Dark Knight for the Joker theme, using only the keys of D and C. And if it's good enough for Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard, it's good enough for me. We'll be referencing the temp track fairly often as we get started, but near the end of the process, we'll just forget about it and our track will become our own. And we're just going to improvise something, play it all the way through, because we can go through and change the notes later. Okay, so that's a great first pass. Very simple and basic, but we'll continue to add to it as we get more and more tracks. So my performance was way off, but I think I can quantize here to, what are those, eighth notes? Yes, looks good. Now, I'm going to go back in and add that brass drama. Yeah, so this only should happen once during the track. I think at a critical point. The whole scene is about a political rally where a politician is giving a speech, intercut with an assassin building his gun. Ugh. Okay, great. So now I want to, for the next two instruments, dedicate one to the political stuff and one to the assassin stuff. So I now have a snare drum menu. This will give me a roll and this will give me a hit. So I'm going to play through the track again and use this only for the sniper rifle stuff. Alright, so now I've got this kind of Mannheim steamroller bass that I'm going to play only during the political stuff. So as this track progresses, the snare drum and the Mannheim steamroller bass should play opposite one another. Okay, so that was pretty sloppy and terrible, but we need another string to back up our staccato here. And this one will play all throughout and we'll just kind of help build up around these other strings. The whole point is you don't really know what the track is until you get several different instruments in, and then the whole thing starts to take shape. Okay, so what do we need now? Let's find something to build up a crescendo at the end. Trem strings. Tremolo, I think? Yes. I'm going to build those up at a few different points to create dramatic tension, and then one big one at the end. And the nice thing now is I can begin to visually see where I need to hit notes. I've got my snare drum stuff here, and then that Mannheim Steamroller bass here. So I can tell, without even watching the movie, where things need to happen. Great. Those are full force right now. I'll go in later and keyframe them up so they're fading in and out. One thing you want to do if you're using MIDI is to layer a lot of different tracks to sort of cover the fact that you're using MIDI in the first place. And a lot of tracks need to be edited and manipulated in a way to blend the whole thing together. So, for this next track, I love synthesizers. So I'll use that for the end and then use something up here for the beginning. Let's try that. Actually, I really like this Asian drum kit. Let's try that. Alright, so that was my worst one yet. Just a total mess, but again, happy with it. There aren't a lot of instruments that are well created in MIDI through a keyboard system like this, but pianos are one of them. Another total disaster, but just what I need at this stage. Cool, we have like a John Carpenter bass. Okay, so there we have our 10 tracks. I think that's a good start. So now the magic is to go through and mix it down and fix the notes and make everything seem intentional. Like I said, it's a jumbled mess right now. None of the instruments are right, but there are several moments throughout the score where I'm hearing things that are starting to spark ideas. So this is the main approach, is I like to just get tracks down where I'm playing just random things, you know, most of which are wrong, but some of which will lead me down the path to the right idea. So now let's start to do some mixing.